Hello and welcome everyone to another Procreate brush video. In this video we're making versions of a dotted brush and a dashed brush. These are again some very simple brushes that we're starting out with. We're going to be reviewing some of the relevant things that we went through in the Brush Studio videos. And if you haven't seen those videos yet, I did kind of a mini series of the Brush Studio. There's 3 parts. I will link that down below in the description, but also in the cards. Those videos, as well as the brush videos that I'm making now, I made one before this with the stamp brush. Those videos are all in my Procreate for Beginners series, technically also. All those videos will be linked as well. And all of my Procreate videos, past, present, and future, can be found in the Procreate and Digital Art playlist on my channel. That will also be linked. So let's get started. Alright, so today we're going to make a few more brushes. These are also very simple. We're going to get more complicated soon, I promise. Alright, we're going to Procreate. I'm going to show you from the beginning this time, basically what you need to do. So you need a square canvas. So you hit this new canvas button over here, this plus sign in the top right corner. And there should be a square option that Procreate already has. If by chance you've deleted this, all you need to do is just make a square canvas. Just by going into here. And then however big you want to make it, just make both those width and height the same amount. Pixels or inches, centimeters, millimeters. But I'm going to go with the one that's already here, which is 2048 by 2048 pixels. Again, that should be in your Procreate already, unless you've deleted it. So, going into layers, it has the background white. We want a black background, so I'm going to make layer 1 our background, just so I can turn it on and off if I need to. You can also change the background color to black if you want, but I want to do it differently like that. So, then you want to add another layer on top, so plus, and then this is going to be, you want this in white. So remember, if you double click in the white area on this disc, it'll take you to pure white. So I also have it in my history, but I just did that to show you. Now these were the stamp brushes we made in the last video. I'm actually going to make another category over here. What do I want to call it? I'm just going to say dots and dashes. Dashes. All right. So then I'm going to be adding brushes to this. Yeah, let's just add a new brush. So again, I'm in this category. You don't necessarily have to be in a new category if you don't want to. You can make it wherever. But I'm just showing I'm in this category. I'm going to the plus here to make a new brush. And this is, the default one that Procreate gives you when you start a new brush. And I am going to keep, for this one, I'm going to keep this circle here because we're just going to use that. But we're going to make some changes to some other stuff just to make a polka dot brush, sort of. So the main thing we're going to be changing is the spacing. Let me actually clear this out. So it depends on how far you want them to be apart. Now you can make something more like a sort of strung together, like a necklace, sort of like a pearls necklace. If you want that, but just to start, we're going to make like a sort of polka dot. In fact, let's just make it 75. That'll be easy, like that. However, you probably don't want, if you go into Apple Pencil, you don't want this opacity on. Unless you do.
But you see the difference, like when we started, it was a little bit lighter pressure, so we had less opacity, just like we did with the stamps in the last video, if you saw that, or if you went through my brush studio videos. But we want to turn that off most of the time for this. The other thing you want to change is you can change all of these, the size and opacity, maximum, minimum. I've explained that in both the part 3 video of my brush studio videos, also in the last video, the stamp brushes. I talked about that as well and why you would change those. I'm gonna leave them the way they are for now. The only other thing you might want to change, and I went over this with the stamp brushes, is the color dynamics. So if you want the dots to be a different color every time, or if you want the saturation to change, or the lightness, darkness, remember you can do that as well. And we will do a version of that later on, but I'm gonna leave that for now, just for this version. And you can always add a grain as well. I'm gonna leave it to be solid for now. Depends on what you want your polka dots to look like. But anyway, that is it. That's all you want to change basically for this type of brush, the default version. So I'm just gonna, actually, let me go to about this brush first. Let me just change this to dotted line. And then I guess I can put my name in here. R. All right. So now we can do it this way, that's fine. It's white on a black background. What you see now, it's a dotted line, and that's rather large, so let's try it a little bit smaller. But you see, if you wanted a dotted line for your design, whatever you're doing, it would be an easy way to make it. And these are really good for teaching as well, which is what I do sometimes. So the next one we're going to do is similar too. But that is a dotted line. And again, you can change the spacing if you want. You can change the size, the maximum, the minimum size, and the opacity if you want to do that. And you can change the colors. We're going to do that in a minute. But right now I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to slide it to the left, duplicate it. And now we're going to change the shape. You can use whatever shape you want, but I'm going to make it more of a dashed line rather than a dotted line. So we're going to do that next. So we're going to change the shape. So let's go out of here real quick. Done and done. And we'll change everything in a minute. Let's just go back to this. Now you're going to want to use the monoline brush in the calligraphy category on Procreate to just draw something, whatever shape you want. So I want a dashed brush, and I want it to be like horizontally, like a rectangle horizontally dashed. So first of all, we want it to be in the middle. So we can use our guides to do that. Now if we go into the wrench, we go into canvas, turn on drawing guide, and then edit drawing guide. You see now, because we're using a black background, it's hard to see this. This is where you're going to have to move this color over so you can see. So you want it to be on the light side, and then you can make it bigger if you want, thicker and more opaque, so you can see it a little better. It depends on how big you want it. So you can change this around to whatever you are comfortable with. Since we're making like a rectangle, I want to sort of do, again, it depends on how big you want this to be. I'm going to do it about there. That's fine. Where there's basically 6 and 6 squares on your grid. And if you're using the same side canvas, I have it at 341. It's not completely perfect on the ends, but that's fine. But that is what I'm using. And it'll just be easier to kind of draw this. I'm gonna squish this so I can see it a little better. It'll be easier to draw this rectangle that I want in the center on here. So what we're gonna do basically is this, where it's gonna be 2 high and then 4 across. So starting in one of these boxes here, and you can use quick lines. And you can even do a quick shape actually if you want. Depends on what you're trying to do. So we're gonna make this straight with that line. That's better. All right. All right, and then just fill it in. So now that's going to be a nice dash that we can use for our line. So the grid isn't going to matter. You can turn it off if you want, but it's not going to show up in your final thing. But what you want to do is either, again, copy paste your canvas into the shape for that brush, or you can save it to your device and then bring it back up, import it. So I'm just gonna copy paste it. So again, I'm gonna take, I have this gesture turned on and it's default turned on. So if you haven't turned it off, it should work. Take your 3 fingers, go down the canvas, it'll bring up the copy paste menu. Now you wanna copy all, because that's gonna copy both the white and the black background. And then you can go back into your brushes here, and wherever you put that brush that we duplicated, I put it in the dots and dashes category, and it's dotted line 1 because it was a duplicated one from this one. I'm gonna go in there. I'm already at shape, 'cause that's where I left it. I'm gonna go edit, import, and then paste. Now I got that dash there. So now it's gonna turn into this. Now, this one's gonna be a little different because it's not symmetrical, like a circle is symmetrical all around. This is gonna be a little different. We're gonna do a few more things to it. So I'm gonna clear this out. But if you notice, like if you go this way, it dashes it that way. But if you go this way, it dashes it, you know, it's always horizontal. So you can keep it that way if you want, but there's other things you can do to change it. So one of those things you can do, if you go to the properties, if you wanted this vertical line where you drew it vertically, if you want it to look like this one, where the rectangles are actually this way, one of the ways you can change that is you can click this orient to screen off, and then if you go out, let's keep this but then turn the layer off. Let's just do another layer, and I am going to turn off the grid for now. So right now it's set up where it's always facing this way. But if you turn the canvas, now it's the opposite. These were the vertical ones before, now this is the horizontal one I drew. Because it's now orienting itself to the canvas the way it was. So it's this way now, or it's either this way or this way, actually. We don't know which way it is, because this is symmetrical vertically in one way and then symmetrical horizontally in another way, not just fully symmetrical like a circle. So the rectangle, the long side, is always facing towards this side of the canvas or this side, because they're both the same, rather than, because it started out like this. If we had orient to screen turned on, it would always be the top of your iPad, no matter which way the canvas was. So in order to get like a certain line a certain way, you'd have to turn the canvas. Like if you wanted this, the dashes to be where the longer part is parallel to this way rather than this way, you would have to rotate the canvas, but you'd have to turn off that orient to screen. Again, I explained this property in the part 3 brush studio, if you want to go back there and get a little more of an explanation. But that's what you would have to do to make it so that you could make the dashes go a certain way when you're drawing vertically rather than horizontally. Now, actually, let me go in here too. What I need to do is change this to dashed line rather. So that's that. So now you see we have the circles. It's a dotted line and a dashed line. All right, so another thing I want to show you, a way you can do it is, I'm going to go back and, go back here, and I'm going to put this back on. So another thing, when you go into the shape here, you can change the rotation here. So if you see, I'm drawing a vertical line here, horizontal here. You can change it. If you go all the way to the right, it's going to follow the stroke. However, the first one it puts down is always going to be kind of off. But this is also better to use if you're going to be doing things with like curves in them and you want them to be dashed rather than just a straight line. So let me show you what that would look like if I'm doing a curve. Like the dashes aren't really following the curve. They're just always facing where, you know, the long side is parallel to the top because that's the way we have it set up. But if you do follow stroke, it follows the stroke of your pencil. And then if you were to change it the other way, in this case, it's going to be the complete opposite. So it's going to work the same way. So again, following stroke. That was follow stroke. This is the opposite. And it has the same pretty much, except for that first one, it has the same result. And basically, what you could do for that first one being messed up, you could just erase that first dash if it's, you know, not the way it's supposed to be on the paper. It's not perfect, but it's kind of a workaround. So you could either do that, and again, this is better if you're doing like curves and stuff, because the other one was kind of if you're doing straight lines, either horizontal or vertical. And because this shape, again, is symmetrical left and right and horizontally and up and down vertically, it's not going to change when you do this flip X or flip Y because all the shapes are the same. They're the same if you flip the X and they're the same if you flip the Y. So that's not going to do anything. The randomize is just going to give you a different orientation every time. So again, if you want that look, you can use it, but now if you remember, the azimuth is another way for you to kind of follow the stroke. But problem there is when you start going this way, it's not gonna, you know, turn it to where it's horizontal. You would have to do, basically you have to kind of treat vertical and horizontal differently. Basically the best bet is changing this follow stroke, or in this case again, the other way would do the same thing. And then just erasing that first stroke because it's not the right way. And if you're going to be doing only vertical lines and horizontal lines with your dashed line, you could make a version that's just horizontal, and then you can make a version that's just vertical. But if you want to use the same pen for both, you're going to want to change this follow stroke because that's the best option you have. So those are the two basic versions of this type of brush, pen, whatever. You can use whatever shape you want. So if you want to do like polka dots with hearts or stars or, you know, again, whatever shape you want, you can do the same kind of concept with whatever shape. And if you want to add a grain to it, you can do that as well. Then there's a few other things you can change if you want. Let's go back to the dots here. So going into color dynamics, again, you can change the color if you want, same way we did with our stamps, and you have to pick a different color to kind of show this, because white's not going to do anything for you. But again, that's changing 50% every stamp, and then all the way I'll give you like the full gamut of colors. And then saturation, changing the saturation of that blue, and lightness is changing again. As with every other time I've shown you this, these colors are all pretty high up in the brightness category, so when you're changing the lightness, it's not going to change much. But if you choose a color that's not as bright to begin with, then it'll change a little bit. But the darkness you can change, because those colors are not dark. You know, those colors are all in the top 50% of the brightness category. If that makes sense. And then you can do your secondary color as well. And again, the default with your secondary color on the drawing pad is black, so it's anywhere between the blue and the black. However, you can choose your secondary color in the color wheel here. That's this. So right now it's white and green, so this is what this would do. Anything in between white and green. So that's what that does. So then there is a difference now between the stamp color jitter and the stroke color jitter, because this isn't a stamp brush, it's a brush where it's got a bunch of stamps in it together. So the stroke's going to be different now than the stamp. So we're starting with that purplish color here. So if I'm changing the hue here, it's going to change every stroke, not every stamp. And then the same with saturation. And again, lightness is not going to do anything. Darkness. And then your secondary color. And then the pressure and tilt are, again, have to do with how much pressure you're using, and that's with your Apple Pencil. So it's going to change the hue with pressure. It's going to be, this is light pressure, this is harder pressure, lighter pressure, harder pressure. And then the opposite way, lighter pressure, harder pressure, lighter pressure, harder pressure, lighter pressure. And then the same with the saturation, brightness, again. And then tilt has to do with the way you're holding your pencil. So that's hard to do again in the middle. But it depends on, you know, what angle your pencil is at when you're drawing. But you can change all those things with that. So that is your color dynamics. They're the ways you can change that if you want to. Then going to just dynamics. So this is, again, the size, changing the size with speed. So that's kind of normal. This is really slow. And this is fast. So then you see that because this was faster, it was getting smaller as I was going faster. And then you can do the opposite where it's bigger where you're going faster. So you can do that if you want. And then you can do the same with opacity. It's getting lighter as you go faster, or it's getting more opaque as you go faster. This is more transparent, not lighter. Kind of is lighter, but more transparent this way and more opaque that way. And then jitter always, you know, this is This will randomize the size of your shapes as you go along. So again, if you want that kind of look, you can do that. And this will randomize the opacity as you're going along. Doesn't have anything to do with pressure whatsoever or speed, just randomized. And then you can do the pressure and tilt things again with your Apple Pencil. So you can change the size based on pressure. This is heavier pressure here. Light, 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 heavy, light, 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 heavy. And then you can do the opposite. Light, heavy. Everything that's a small line there is heavy. And then, opacity. Light, 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 heavy. And then the flow and bleed as well. And then you can change the tilt as well if you want to do that there. But those are the main things you can change, other than changing the shape and the grain with those dotted or dashed paintbrushes for Procreate. So again, whatever versions you want to do. And again, just as a reminder, you can make versions of these like different. If you want to do like, okay, this is the one I do horizontally, and then make a vertical one, and then make one that follows your stroke. Make one that's pressure sensitive with size or opacity or whatever. You can make all different versions if you want. Or you can just keep changing this one. Like, okay, this time I want the size to change, so I'll just change that and then go back and change it again. If you get it the way you want it, you might want to create a reset point, just like we did with the stamp brushes. That way, if you make any changes, you can always go back to the original way you had it. But that's it for this type of brush, so I will see you soon with another one. Thanks for watching.
Alright, so that's going to do it for the dotted and dashed brushes video here. As I stated before, I already did a brush video about stamp brushes, so that's another one you can check out if you haven't already. And before I begin the rest of the series in Procreate for Beginners, I do have a few more brushes we're going to make together, so those will be coming up, and if you are watching this after this video comes out, they may already be done. Again, those will all be linked in both the Procreate in Digital Art playlist and the Procreate Brushes playlist on my channel. And again, everything will be linked in the description. And again, if you haven't seen any of my other Procreate for Beginners videos and you want to learn more about the Procreate app, I've got videos on just about every topic for beginners in Procreate. Again, all in that Procreate and Digital Art playlist. And I've got more coming in the future. Plus, pretty soon we're going to start doing some projects together, so be on the lookout for that. I'll see you next time.